Okay. Hi guys, welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today we'll be doing fantasy book recommendations for beginners. So half of these are low fantasy and then some of these are like mid to high, and we'll get all up into this. But I feel like I want to make this video because fantasy is a very vast genre and there's all different types of fantasy. Like we have fantasy romance now. We have fantasy with literally no romance. So I feel like if you're new to fantasy, it's kind of hard to figure out where you want to go, where you want to be. So we're gonna do that here in this video. So I think I'm gonna start with like the low fantasy, but like I kind of have the stack of books out of order. So honestly, we're just gonna see how I put them because I have about 15 to 17 books I think I have here. Some of these are like popular on Book Talk, and some of these other ones are kind of old. If you read fantasy like 10 years ago, you might like see some of these books here. But we're gonna start it off easy. And I feel like if you read Twilight, even though I did not read Twilight, but this book is like compared to Twilight. So my first book recommendation that I have is Crave by Tracy Wolff. And I have not finished the series. I have only read the first book. And I have not read Twilight, so I'm not sure if this is actually like a good book, this like Twilight, but it gave me Twilight vibes from what I know of Twilight, but I have not read Twilight and I might read that in the future. But yes, I feel like this would be really good for beginners because it's not like it's like reading level is probably like fourth, fifth grade. Like it's YA. I read this when I was in high school still, and it was very easy to digest. The plot and the pacing really wasn't like slow or anything. It's not like crazy descriptive. The world, like the magic and like the world system is not insane. There's like shifters, so I would consider this like a paranormal type of like book. And I have some more books that are like there are paranormal is where there's like shifters, witches, vampires, like that. This one I believe have also has dragon shifters. It has been a couple of years since I've read this book, and like for some of the other books, it has been a couple of years since I read some of the other books. So bear with me. I wanted to make this video a long time ago, but so yes, for Crave, I feel like you would really like this if you like paranormal-esque type of books because that's kind of what this is. And I feel like this would be really good for beginners because again, there's not a crazy world system. It's not 8,000 pages. It kind of reads very quick. So I feel like this would be very easy to digest. And in this book, I believe the main character, it's been a couple years, but the main character's name, I can't even find her name in here. That's embarrassing. But I know Jackson was the main person. And it's also set in a school, which I was like, I really like the books that are set up in the school. And it also like the chapters have like those like quirky, fun titles like in Percy Jackson. I didn't put Percy Jackson in this list because everyone knows to read that. So read it. But yes. I forgot the main character's name. But I feel like this would be a really good book because it's kind of about vampires and this is like romance, like paranormal romance, which I believe is a subgenre of fantasy. So yes, the first book I have is Crave by Tracy Wolff. I'm not sure if you guys want like an in-depth description of these. I don't want to like bore you guys with the details, but I feel like you would like this if you like paranormal romance type vampire-esque books set in a school with like other shifters and stuff like that. So yes, this one. The next book recommendation that I have is also like paranormal-esque. I read this one also a couple years ago, so the details are very fluffy in my head. Very fluffy in my head. So the next one is Serpent and Dove by Shelby Mahoran. This book series is also a series I have not finished. I read the first book a while back and I was waiting for the second book to come out and it never came out. It came out now, but like it's been so many years. I do want to eventually continue on with this series and also Crave, but I just have not. So I read the first book and I thought this was really good. Now this I feel like it's a weird type of place because I don't want to say this is just like a YA book, but it's kind of like YA going into like new adult-ish type of territory because there is a scene in here. I read this book whenever it came out. I can't remember if this came out like in 20, was it 2020, 2019? I can't remember exactly when this came out. but I want to say I was around the age of 16 when this came out. 15 or 16 maybe younger than that, but I want to say I was 15 or 16. I'm 20 now. So I was like, oh, I thought this was like a cute little YA book, and I was like, oh, it has a little bit of spice in there, just a little bit. And yes, this is a good recommendation for people who are getting into fantasy and they like romance. This is also like low fantasy, paranormal esque, where this is about witches. So the main thing about Serpent and Faster, but I was saying before my phone cut off, was that basically all you need to know about Serpent and Dove is that it's a great book for if you like fantasy, like romance. It's like low fantasy, very witchy books. Like this is a witch book. Witchy books, if you like romance, or so the tropes, like marriage of convenience, like forced proximity, like fun characters with like banter. You would enjoy this. You should read this. The next two are these are really good recommendations. These are both book tub recommendations. So we're gonna start with One Dark Window. I think this book is really good. I love this book. I did give it 4 or 4.5 stars. I also gave the first book the same rating because the only takeaway from this book I think is slightly slower pace to get into. I say like around the 150 to 100 to maybe 150 page mark you might like really get into it. But I really love this book. Not 150. It won't take 150. Like 100 maybe. It's really good because it has like that gothic fantasy type of vibe, and that's very unique to me. I've never read a book like this, one that deals with card magic. So in this book, in this story, you're following this girl named Elspeth, Elizabeth. I'm not sure how to pronounce her name correctly, but in this world, it's like a kingdom. There's like rulers, like that type of like kingdom fantasy vibe, if you know what I'm talking about. Where her dad was like the head of the guard, but he retired. So basically, in this world, there's a blight just like making these people sick, and but also giving them powers. And they also have these cards. They have card matches. They have these like characters. They have these like characters. These like spirit type thing. It's really confusing to me, like to explain out loud. But like these cards give them magic essentially. And in this world, the people who have been touched by the mist and get powers from it are basically ostracized, collected, sometimes killed, sent into the mist to go crazy. And yes, so Elizabeth is special kind of because she has a monster living inside of her from one of the cards, and it's kept a secret because if it were to come out, then she wouldn't be able to be free. So like it's been a kept secret and she kind of keeps to herself. And in this is like a gothic type of fantasy. It's like one of my first gothic fantasies and I really enjoyed this and I thought it was great. So I think you would like this book if you like gothic fantasy, or you might think you like gothic fantasy. It's not crazy descriptive. It's not super long. It's about like 300, 400 pages, 380 something pages. So it's not that long. Loved it. The characters are very interesting. It has that found family type of feeling. You get some romance. So yes, I do love this for the how unique it is. Very interesting, great magic system, very fun read. I think Big Book Talk did a wonderful job with this book. This is hyped, well hyped. The other book talk book that I have that I feel like is a great recommendation. I gave this book 5 stars. I absolutely love this book. It's so amazeballs. Everyone should read it. Is Belladonna. This book is accurately hyped. This is a great book for people who want to get into fantasy because it's so many different types of genres in this one book. If you like historical type of fantasy, it has that historical vibe, almost like a Bridgerton meets like gothic fantasy. It has a mystery thing. It has romance. It has everything. If you like historical fantasy, gothic vibe, mystery, romance, you would love this. This book is great. In this book, we follow Signa, and basically, she can't die. She cannot die. She can't die. And death is her friend. Death is her. Like, she can't die. There's a mystery going on. She goes over this family. She's trying to solve, like, this type of, like, murder. And also trying to figure out what's making this person's sick, and then she like sees like the family that she's like these relatives that she went to live with, they're related to her, of course. She goes with this family to live with them, and she sees like the late mother, the ghost of her. And so basically, this is her trying to figure out what's killing what killed her and what's killing one of the family members, and she's also like coming out in society, like trying to like find a love, find a husband, like be in society. She has money, people want to use her for her money, and yes, it's a romance. I love it. This ends on that cliffhanger, and it's great, and everyone should read it. It's amazing. I gave it 5 out of 5 stars, and this is the book that you should read out of this entire video. If you don't take any other recommendations from me, read this. Read this, please. It's so great. It's amazing, and everyone should read it. Read it. Read it. The next book that I have is Vampire Academy, which I also feel like is going to know how many times I've tried to film this video. I'm so sorry for my dead ass energy. I've tried to film this video like 20 billion times. I was talking about Vampire Academy, and I was saying that I feel like you should read this book because it's a really good book. It's a low fantasy. It's a great like found family type of trope. We're following Rose and Lissa, and basically they're best friends. Lissa's like a royal vampire. As she has magic, and then Lissa is, and then Rose is her bodyguard, and she's a vampire. So she's half human, half vampire. Supposed to protect her, and then have this weird connection, romance, intrigue, a little bit of mystery stuff going on, magic, found family, love, everything angsty. Read it. I'm gonna recommend is this one's like more, these next two are kind of high fantasy as this one I read a while ago. It's called the Fallen Kingdom series by Morgan Rhodes. I did not finish the series because I started to lose interest, but I feel like this is a really good like entrance into like higher fantasy. There's more characters, more stuff going on. There's different types of kingdoms and stuff. They're going on journeys and epics and stuff like that. Not epics, but like they're going on journeys, and basically like you're following multiple different people. And basically, if you like betrayals, secret alliances, murders, forbidden love, you like this. People die in this book. There's like witches, there's watchers, immortal beings. I feel like this is a great book to like read if you want to get into a higher fantasy type. It's really easy to read, very easy to digest, and yes, read this. The next book that I have is kind of more higher fantasy. This is called Snow Like Ashes by Sarah Rosh. I also did not finish the series, read it a very, very long time ago. But I do think this is a really good book if you want to get into higher fantasy. And basically, this is like a kingdom of sorts, it's like seasons, if you will, like seasonal magic type of high fantasy-esque a little bit. And basically, they want to basically steal back the Winter Kingdom's magic and rebuild the kingdom. That's essentially what's happening in this book. And so you're following like an orphan, and she has lived her whole life as a refuge, and she's basically trying to become a warrior, and she basically wants to help the Kingdom of Winter rise to power again. I remember this being a really, really good book, very easy to read, very interesting. I think you might like this if you like that like seasonal type of magic vibe. Okay, this is another book I feel like another book that has a very interesting type of plot line. Very hard to describe. I feel like you should really go into this book just not knowing that much, and that is Daughter of Smoke and Bone. I almost finished this trilogy. I did not read the last book. I got like almost like halfway and then I stopped. But I think this book is great if you want to read something that's different and you kind of already said reading fantasy, but everything is like gimmicky to you and you want something different. This book I can't even explain to you. All you need to know, she has blue hair. She works for like this dude that like kind of the person that's like collects bones and stuff. It's very hard to explain. There's angels. Just read it. This is something you need to go into not knowing anything. This is very intricate, very unique. I have never read anything like this. This is something that you need to know what it's about. Just read it. Just read it. There is romance in here, betrayal, angels, death, bones, blue hair. Yes, read it. Okay, and then the next book, I'm currently reading this book. I have not finished it. And so far, I think this is a great book to read if you are getting into fantasy because it's not that hard to read. And that would be The Prison Healer. I have about 100 pages left, maybe 110 pages left in this book. And so basically, in this book, we're following a prison healer in this kingdom. Like, there's a prison that everyone's sent to if you're bad. Like, there's like I guess like multiple nations. Like, the one kingdom's that's in power. There's like rebels that are fighting them because like there's like two different bloodlines. Kind of a little like confusing to like describe to you. But essentially, there's a prison healer. She takes care of all the inmates inside the prison. Very like almost apothecary vibes. If you watched the like anime Apothecary, this kind of reminds me of it like a little bit. Nothing like it at all, but kind of similar to it in the sense that like you see her talking about like herbs, like seeing her use like salves and stuff like that, mixing stuff up and using it to treat inmates. And then basically she is waiting for someone to come, the rebels to come help and rescue her, and she's entrusted with keeping this very, very important person alive. And there's these trials, and she basically trying to help with that. Trying to help with what's going on in the kingdom and the wars and stuff like that. And of course, there's a little bit of a romance in here. Found family. Really, really enjoying this so far. I think this would be great for someone who is just getting into fantasy. Very easy to follow, not crazy. They start to explain stuff. There is magic in here, but it's not like crazy or anything like that. So I feel like this is great for a beginner who has not read a lot of fantasy. So yes. Okay, next books I read, these are both like books I read in middle school. I would consider these like middle grade to YA. And of course, I could not do a video without doing a Rick Riordan book, and that is The Red Pyramid. I love this. This is a gateway into fantasy. If you like mythology, if you have not read Percy Jackson, read Percy Jackson. This is the Kane Chronicles. This is Egyptian mythology, and I absolutely love this. It's middle grade, so it's fun, short. Well, not short. Like it's not crazy long. It's actually kind of thick. Not short, but like fun, quick in the sense that like the writing is not crazy. It's meant for middle schoolers. Like it's not crazy. You get to learn like a little stuff about Egyptian mythology. I think this was very, very fun, very, very cute, and I really, really liked this when I read it. I read all the books in like this little trilogy. And I thought it was so cute seeing the siblings work together and be together. Found family was very strong in this book. If you like found family in your books, this is a great way to get into fantasy. You're seeing magic, you're seeing them going through like trials and like basically fighting monsters. This is great. This is great. Read this. Read this. The next book that I have, this is like sci-fi fantasy, and it will be Cinder by Marissa Meyer. I read this in middle school, absolutely loved it. It kind of takes the fairy tales and like spins them on their head, and basically spins the fairy tales on their head. So in this one, the first book, I'm actually in the middle of rereading these, but the first book basically follows like a Cinderella type, but she's a cyborg. It's basically there's like a in this like type of world there's like this lunar kingdom is over like the entire world. I wouldn't say this is like almost urban, paranormally, fantasy, sci-fi because they like kind of use the same names as the countries in like this world. So it's not high fantasy or anything like that. And basically, she is a mechanic. She's a cyborg, she's a mechanic, but she's very, very important. And you kind of learn, like, as the books, like, each book follows a different character, but all the characters are in the other books and it's all connected. So she's a very important cyborg. That's what you need to know. This is great. The pacing is, I would say, medium pace. This is really good for beginners because it's meant for middle schoolers, I believe. And you really can't go wrong with this. This is great, especially if you love a fairy tale vibe. If you love a fairy tale vibe, you will like this. Going based off of fairy tales, we're going to talk about one of my favorite childhood books that I read in like fourth, fifth grade. Absolutely love this series. Did not finish it because the very, very last book, like the fifth or sixth book, came out when I had got older and I had already kind of grown out of it. But I am rereading the series now and will finish it because I do have the last book. And that would be The Land of Stories by Chris Colfer. The Wishing Spell, I reread this book like 2 years ago, 1 or 2 years ago, because I'm rereading the series right now. This book is great if you like a fairy tale vibe. If you've ever watched the TV show Grimm, which I absolutely love that TV show, make it like kiddie and make it about like jumping into books. This right here. You love fairy tale, Once Upon a Time vibe. This is your book. If you like Once Upon a Time, you should read this. This is like a kiddie version of it though. It's very easy to read for getting into fantasy because it's meant for little kids and it's actually very enjoyable to read even if you're older. Because I read this when I was like 17. I'm 20 now, I believe, and I still enjoyed it. Loved it. It's very quick, very easy to read because it has very simple vocabulary. You get a lot of characters, a lot of magic, fairy tale, homey, cozy vibe. So I feel like that would be great if you like that type of vibe. And this is amazing. I feel like you should read it. It's really cute. It might not be for everyone because it is kind of kiddie, but it's great. Great recommendation. So yes, fairy tale vibes. Yes. About this is one of my all-time favorite books. Like, this trilogy is so near and dear to my heart because it's just great. This is like another book recommendation. If you don't take anything else from this video, honestly, you need to also read this. Anything by Cassandra Clare. I have not read the Last Hours, that trilogy, but the Clockwork trilogy, and then Mortal Instruments, absolutely love. Like, these are great if you want to get into fantasy. They basically about shadow hunters. They have these rooms. It's like wars. You're fighting magic, death, everything. This is something that you need to read if you want to get into fantasy. This is great. Especially this video is like important if you're trying to get into like super duper high fantasy. None of my recs are really super duper high fantasy, but this is a great starting point. This is paranormal. There's werewolves, there's shadow hunters, there's angels, there's demons, kind of. Like, this is great. This is peak fantasy, especially like from like 10 years ago, 8 years ago. This is amazing. This is what you need to be reading. It's great. It's great. It's amazing. Read this. You don't need to know. You need to start. I feel like you can start either with this trilogy or the Mortal Instruments trilogy, wherever you kind of want to start. Either between those two. I wouldn't start anywhere else because there's actually like a chronological order to follow. People do say start with Mortal Instruments first, and I kind of agree with them, but I feel like you would be okay if you started with this one first because this technically is first in the timeline, and I love this one. I do love Mortal Instruments, but this one has a near dear special place in my heart. This trilogy is the only trilogy I've ever read where they did a love triangle correctly, and for that alone, this is something that needs to be read. It has to be read. It's so great, and I think you should read it. So yes. Ooh, it's gonna fall. Okay, and then the next book we're gonna talk about is one I also read when I was younger, and that is Children of Blood and Bone by Tomi Adeyemi. And I feel like this is also really good for beginners of fantasy because you read this in middle school. You kind of get like a lot in this book. It's kind of like high fantasy-esque. There's a kingdom. There's people like ostracized for this type of color hair. They're trying to bring like magic. You can get like fight to the death type of feel, betrayal, love, grief. Like, it's kind of a lot. This is like in a lot of fantasies, and I feel like this would be great for people who really want to read African mythology type of books. This is great, and it's hard hitting, but it's not crazy because I did read this in middle school. But yes, I think this would be cute. It's a Deception by Mary E. Pearson. This is like great because for beginners, mainly because it's like the magic system is weird. It's very faint. It's like low magic, low fantasy, like princessy type of kingdom vibe, and you're really just there for like the found family, the love, the journey. The magic system is very like it's whimsical. It's like not really there, kind of there, but not really there. She doesn't have like superpowers, nothing like that. It's very interesting. Kept me on my toes. Kind of. What I was saying was that like this is basically like kind of unique, and I really liked it, and I feel like people should read it. And then the last two books that I have are The Kiss So Dark and Lonely, and then my all-time favorite, Legendborn. You have to read this. Like, this is another book in the video. You have to read it. It's great. It's amazing. You probably already know what it is. You probably already read it. If you haven't read it, just read it. Black Girl, Magic, Root Magic, King Arthur, Round Table. Read it. 5 out of 5 stars. Beauty and the Beast kind of retelling, disability rep. Really easy to get into. Great. Read it. Read it. Read it. Okay guys, that's gonna be the end of the video. My phone kept cutting out, but thank you for watching.